in Paris, where protests have been building over the recent days concerning, well, runaway energy prices, and so far no help from the government. A lot of folks there are just getting their first utility bills, in many cases having doubled or tripled, happening not only in France, but in England and in Germany and in Italy and across Europe. Growing concerns that folks can ill afford what's coming down the pike, and not only a nasty, likely cold spell for much of continental Europe. Lieutenant Colonel Danny Davis is here with us, Defense Priorities Senior Fellow. More important to me, someone who can make sense of what's going on in the world. And this protest that's building, Danny, over just giving money to Ukraine, at the same time a lot of folks say give that money to us. Does that worry you?
Yeah, it does, and you're right. I mean, there's other places. In fact, most countries in Europe are going through similar kinds of protests, and they're starting to build up. And some, it's 10,000 people have been showing up, and some of them, I believe, it was in Germany earlier. And as the weather gets colder, these things are only going to increase, because when people see themselves suffering hardship, when they see they don't have enough electricity for their own in enterprises and factories, and then they see their prices going up at the same time, they see their government sending large numbers of dollars to Ukraine, which only fuels the problem, they're going to be more unhappy about that. And I think that that's going to really start to be a problem as the winter sets in.
And it's not only a problem there, as you've reminded me, Colonel. I mean, now you have, Kevin McCarthy, who could likely be the next Speaker of the House, has been saying, maybe it's time to sort of re-examine all these aid packages and money that we send to Ukraine, saying it's not a free blank check. What did you make of that?
Yeah, well, I'm glad to hear it. I mean, that should be the view of every American politician, because, look, if we just give tranche after tranche of money to Ukraine, that continues to potentially harm our own interests, and it does nothing to further our own national security. And you have to ask, why would we continue to do that? There has to be some kind of an end game, or there has to be some kind of clear, demonstrable benefit to the United States. And right now, there's neither one of those.
So when we are giving Ukraine the weaponry and the money that we are, and we're already seeing some other NATO members not too keen on following up, I think we give close to 85 to 90% of that aid. If that's pulled or cut just when they have, the advantage and lead and the Russians on the run, or that's the supposition, then what?
Well, that's a supposition that's pretty rampant in the Western media, but it's not matched on the ground by reality. Ukraine made some significant gains this, in the last month or two. But those things are tentative. And now then, Russia is now probably only weeks away from having some of those hundreds of thousands of mobilized troops come in. And at the same time, you see that they're launching these strikes that have knocked out 30% of the energy infrastructure in Ukraine, which is making it even harder for them to come back. And right now, I don't see any military prospect that no matter what we give Ukraine, that they're going to turn this around anytime soon.
So all these areas that the Russians, I'm sorry, Danny, all these areas that the Russians have annexed and now are losing in some of those same territories, that doesn't have much staying power to you?
No, it doesn't, because when you look, right now what Russia's doing is they're trying to hold on to what they have, and pretty much you've seen since the beginning of August, when these big gains were made by Ukraine, they pretty much petered out now. The only place that's still a little bit at play is Kherson. The rest of them have kind of solidified. What Russia's going to do is they're going to bring in potentially 70 to 80,000 additional troops next month, and the whole thing could shift by then. So that's why I say that.
Colonel, I did want to get your thoughts. We had California Congressman Ro Khanna here, who had his own ideas about how to go back at the Saudis for snubbing us and going ahead and cutting oil production, or leading OPEC to do that by about 2 million barrels a day. I want you to react to this. This is Congressman Khanna. What he thinks the president should do. How long would we keep that suspension going? Now, you're looking forward to them reversing that decision. That doesn't seem imminent. So what would that mean?
In the legislation Senator Blumenthal and I have introduced, it would be up to a year, and we would put pressure on them to reconsider. Here's the thing. They can't go to China and Russia for the arms. It would take them 5 to 10 years. They are very dependent on our parts, and we have tremendous amount of joint defense agreements with them where we're actually sending them sensitive U.S. technology, producing it in Saudi Arabia. Now, I understand that they're an ally. We need the alliance. There are other nations that are threats in the Middle East. I'm not saying do away with the total alliance, but I am saying you don't treat an ally the way they're treating us.
All right, I should have been more clear going into that, Danny. What he's saying is stop sending them arms until they reverse this decision or treat us like the ally and friend we are, you say?
Yeah, he's certainly right. The Saudis can't just say, okay, we're going to start getting all our weaponry from China or from Russia, because there is an infrastructure that's built over decades, and you can't just undo that. So we do have leverage over that. And look, I think it's time for us to reassess our overall relationship with Saudi Arabia, because the Middle East is not anywhere near as important to us as it used to be based on our own domestic oil situation. And, I think it's about time to maybe reset that thing so that we take a little bit more concern with our national interests and not just give a blank check to Saudi Arabia with whatever they want.
So when the president is tapping the Strategic Petroleum Reserve yet again, what do you think of that?
Yeah, I'm not really for that. That's why I've been, so much an advocate that we need to put as much diplomacy in ending this war so we can end a lot of these sanctions to protect our own self. But, I'm not sure because that's not a long-term solution. And right now we're going to be allegedly cutting off all the Russian oil on December 5th, and that's going to even add more downward pressure on the price of oil. And, so the strategic reserve is something that should be kept for an actual emergency and not depleted before that happens.
All right. Got it, my friend. Very good seeing you. Danny, thank you, as always, but more for your incredible service to this country. He's a very modest guy. The incredible, though, still holds. Danny Davis on that. That'll do it here. Here comes the 5.